coach for this e-debate. And first, we thank God for journey mercy from Ogun State. Here we are in Benue State, and we are happy that we are going to participate in this e-debate. And with the help of God, we are expecting that God will help us, that we will come first and we will go home with victory.
Hello Nigerians, we are the Ogun State team, and I am the lead speaker for my team. My name is Adebaju Oluwapamilerin. I have between my supporting speakers. My first supporting speaker is
Lead the Success Oluwasegun.
And my second my experience so far on the debate is that we are happy that our oratory skills have been bringing out by different organizations. So our expectations of this debate is that we are aiming for the best. Get well states.
On my right hand side is Team Ogun State proposing the motion, and we have the lead speaker as Adebayo Pamilerin. The first supporting speaker as Oloyede Success, and the second supporting speaker as Adeyemi Michael. And on my left hand side is Team Anambra opposing the motion, and we have the lead speaker as Ogun. The first supporting speaker as Ejikeme Jeffrey, and the second supporting speaker as Eze John Paul. Now, I call upon the lead speaker from the side proposition to open the case of your arguments.
Emerging in Nigeria, where the voice of the people are silenced, where their rights are trampled upon, where the media is gagged, where the truth is distorted to save the interest of the powerful people, where opinions and ideas are crushed beneath the weight of oppression, where no one dare speaks, else they will face retribution. This is not just a possibility, but a harsh reality. I hereby stand against any form of curtail of freedom of expression, for it's the lifeblood of democracy. Pardon my manners, ladies and gentlemen. I say beautiful evening to the Mr. Chairman, sir, panel of judges, co-debaters, accurate timekeeper, and my ever-attentive audience. Hi, I'm Adebayo Oluwapamilerin Rebecca. I have with me my supporting speakers. My first supporting speaker is Oloyede Success, and my second supporting speaker is Adeyemi Michael. We are delegates from Ogun State. Our mission here on this day, dated 3rd of November 2024, is to strongly stand in support of the motion, which states is censorship of hate speech on social media and infringement on freedom of speech. Censorship, infringement, hate speech. According to the Advanced Oxford Dictionary, censorship is the prevention or the inhibition and suppression of certain ideas, while hate speech is an expression that targets an individual or group of people regarding their characteristics, their ethnicity, their race or tribe. Infringement is violation or encroachment upon someone else's right. Now, why do this house choose to believe that censorship of hate speech is an infringement on the freedom of speech of individuals? Listen to me, everyone. Section 39(1) of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria stated that every individual should be given the opportunity to speak, hold ideas, hold opinions, and seek information without interference. Going internationally, the International Covenant of Civil Society also recorded in Article 19(2) of their Constitution that everybody should implement freedom of expression. The European Society said that for a better democratic society, we need to implement freedom of speech. In the context of our argument as a team, I, as the lead speaker, will be talking on how hate speech is being misinterpreted, how it inhibits the true ingredients of democracy, how it hinders access to educational resources. While my first supporting speaker, Sussex, will talk and shed light more on this issue, and Michael will further close our argument on this notion. Now, having known the true meaning of hate speech, any speech that does not go down well with the powerful people are still classified under the manipulating speech of hate speech. How do you classify my speech? Because I speak the truth as hate speech and expecting me to say you are not infringing on my right? Second, John Milton, an advocate for freedom of expression, an epic poet, and one of the authors that best describes the poem in Nigeria, Paradise Lost. He strongly states that freedom of expression goes beyond verbal utterances, but then our rights are limited, censored, sanctioned, and also blocked all in the name of censorship. Imagine, or take for instance
Engaged.
Facebook has blocked so many individuals just because they post something that does not even warrant access to and inhibits the true ingredients of democracy. Panel of judges, if I might ask you, what do you think democracy is? Democracy is the government in which the power is vested in the people, where their rights, their opinions, and ideas are respected and protected. Why then should we inhibit the true democracy when they have this opportunity to speak? Imagine fair hearing in the court of law, whereby a lawyer has to impede a yes or no answer on an opponent, just because he knows that further explanation might reveal the truth. Why then should we censor speech when we know that it is only our means of freedom of expression on social media? Can I have your point of information, please?
We have seen cases of lots of cases in the past where hate speech on social media radicalized people in real life who went on to cause violence and bloodshed. Are you okay with this?
All right. Stephen Covey, a philanthropist and an advocate for freedom of expression, said that the only skill you can get is your right to express yourself. Furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, it hinders access to educational resources. Educational resources in the sense that when YouTubes are being censored, when Twitter, Facebook, and WhatsApp are being censored, how do you expect these young generations coming up to become your leader and my leader to govern the nation correctly with their responsibility? With only the social media, we are able to come together, profile together, and collaborate on projects and practicals to improve and facilitate learning. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the freedom to expression ourselves in the digital era is the cornerstone of democracy. As Nelson Mandela aptly put it, a democratic society requires a free flow of information and the freedom to challenge and critique the powerful. I have supporting speakers to further illuminate this critical issue. Watch out.
Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. That was a wonderful speech from the lead speaker from the side proposition. Now, I call upon the lead speaker from the side opposition to also open the case of their side.
No right is absolute, and no right can ever be absolute. On opposition, we say a very big yes to freedom of speech, a very big yes to freedom of, and a very big yes to freedom to belong to any association of your choice. However, even the most fundamental of human rights must have limitations. Now, you can't tell me that because I have the freedom of movement, I can walk into your home anytime, any day without permission. And you can't tell me that because I have the freedom of association, I can join bad groups like terrorist groups or cultist groups. Good evening, panel of educators, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ogun Jessica, and I'm the lead speaker from side opposition. Yes, we support freedom of speech, but if censoring hate speech on social media platforms is not an infringement on the rights of these individuals, rather, it's a reasonable limitation to their rights. And and this limitation can protect the rights of others as well. Now, if one person's right infringes on the rights of other people, then it should be responsibly moderated or limited. As the lead speaker, I'll be defining 3 key terms: censorship, hate speech, and infringement. Now, censorship is the restriction or suppression to access to information, ideas, or expressions that are deemed objectionable, that are deemed hateful, and that are deemed inappropriate. In short, censorship is responsibly moderating the rights of individuals. Now, hate speech is a speech that incites violence and discriminates against a particular individual, a particular group of people, whilst infringement means denying somebody his or her rights. As the lead speaker, I'll take the argument on hate speech, on how hate speech helps marginalized communities, how limits on speeches already exist, and protecting of democratic value. My first supporting speaker will take the argument on preventing radicalization and violence and social media platforms as private entities. The House, my first line of argument is on how hate speech harms marginalized communities. The House, because of how violent and how hateful hate speech is, it can target people in the society, especially the vulnerable, and harm them both verbally and emotionally. The House, hate speech is bad because one hate speech, for example, Igbos are terrorists, burn their shops down, can make millions of people hate on a particular individual or a particular group of people, and this can cause harm to that individual or that group of people. Now, proposition supports giving them education, but in the House, even if you give them education, not everyone will take these corrections. Some people will still believe in their ideology, and the ideology that they same harm, and what this means is that harm will be done and harm will continue being done. Now, the best option is to censor hate speech. Remember, we are not clamping down on the rights of these individuals. We are just responsibly moderating their rights to ensure that people's rights are also protected. Now, studies by the American Psychological Association found that exposure to hate speech can lead to increased anxiety, depression, and isolation, especially among marginalized groups. Now, an example of this of what happened in the US a few months back when Donald Trump posted a hate speech stating that the Haitian immigrants are eating the cats and dogs, and they are eating the animals of people in America. Now, this made the Americans hate the Haitian immigrants, and this made the Haitian immigrants not able to express their freedom of speech and freedom of association as well. So my third line of argument is on protecting democratic violence. The House, proposition supports giving them education, but on all side of opposition, we support that freedom of speech should not be absolute, especially if it infringes on the rights of other people as well. Now, speeches that incite violence or harm against somebody can lead to defamation, and defamation can lead to physical, emotional, or social trauma. An example of this is of what happened in Nigeria in the last presidential election, when some people posted on social media that Igbos that come to Lagos polling center to vote should be beaten up. Now, people take this as a joke, but it happened, and this infringed on the right of franchise of these Igbos that are living in Lagos. Can I take a look? Yeah.
Yes. So how can you cite an historical examples where censorship has successfully eradicated harmful content?
Now, the House, censorship. Okay, an example of this is of how even the first black female member of parliament in British stated that hate speech on social media platforms have caused her and her followers great trauma and has even posed a threat to her lives. But the censorship of this hate speech will actually not make people see it, and then it will cause her freedom of speech to be protected. Now, my third line of argument is on how limit on speech already exists. The House, in starting school, limits of speeches already exist, and it's not only freedom of speech that has limitations, but all other rights as well. Now, the House, people all over the world, limitations are placed on speeches that incite violence against a particular individual, a particular group of people. Now, a vivid example of this is of how even in the most democratic countries in the world, which are Scandinavian countries like Netherlands, Finland, and whatever, put robust and rigorous regulations on hate speech. Now, this shows how even in democratic society, limitations on speeches already exist, and how censorship of hate speech is not an infringement on the rights of this individual. Rather, it upholds democracy and protects people's rights. With this, let the motion stand.
Wow, that was great. I can feel the hate building up. Now, I invite the first supporting speaker from the side proposition to further the case of their arguments.
My opponent argued that hate speech have ramifications that could lead to real-world violence, undermining the freedom of expression. However, we must understand that out of control hate speech can incite violence on those who are victimized by it. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a world where every idea, every thought, and every information is suppressed by an invisible hand, enforced by faceless algorithms and corporate judgments. Today, I stand there resolutely in the position that censorship of hate speech is an infringement of freedom of speech, one that undermines our foundational rights and societal discourse. To comment, the beauty of free speech is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations Organization, which states that everybody has the right to freedom of expression without interference. This proclamation highlights the intrinsic value of free speech, a pillar of our democracy that allows us to express disagreement, engage in dialogue, and question authorities. When we permit censorship under the guise of freedom of expression, we risk undermining a slippery slope that could erode our fundamental belief in the open exchange of ideas. Second, let us explore the fundamental role. Let us explore the fundamental role that unchecked censorship on social media platforms play in diminishing individual freedom of expression. For instance, the American Research Center indicated that 64% of Americans believe that social media companies often censor political viewpoints. By permitting censorship, we not only restrict the discussion of specific viewpoints, but also create a platform of distrust between platforms and users. Third, when people argue that censorship is a way of protecting marginalized communities, they overlook the potential consequences of being silent.
On that point, sir.
A country that can stand against opposition and confront every idea vigorously is to understand the risk of being intellectually stagnant and morally complacent. Back to your argument.
And you have freedom of movement, but you can't walk into my house without permission. And you have freedom of association, but you cannot join terrorist group. So why then should you have the right to harm me and others with your freedom of speech?
Yet, censorship often inherently limits individual expression, especially when it comes to them bringing out or showcasing their rights. Further, in conclusion, the one intention behind censorship of hate speech might be rooted in protecting varied individuals. It inherently diminishes our freedom of expression by allowing government and corporations to determine allowable speech, undermines our potential freedom of expression. As we navigate this digital landscape, I implore us, I ask you a question: will we embrace the ideas of open discourse and mutual understanding, or will we succumb to a future where our voices are silenced? So I leave you with the words of Voltaire, a French philosopher and scientist. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. I hand over to my second supporting speaker to buttress and elucidate on this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I invite the first supporting speaker from the side opposition to also further the case of their arguments.
Today is my wedding day. Color of the day, white and gold. But if you're not putting on this color, you use the door. Today, I get to decide who dances on my dance floor. You don't get to dance. Panel, that I stop them from dancing doesn't mean I infringed on the right to express themselves on the dance floor, because this is my wedding day, this is my event, therefore my rules. Same applies to the social media platforms that are owned by private individuals who get to establish and enforce their own community guidelines. Therefore, if they censor history on social media platforms that actually trying to protect the community standards that guides the use of their platforms in today's, that guides the use of their platforms. Panel, with this I begin. Good evening, the panel of adjudicators and of course other members of the House. My name is Ejike Jeffrey, as the first supporting speaker of Team Opposition. Panel, during the course of argument of the first supporting speaker of Team Opposition, we actually threw a point of information to which he responded that we limit opinions when it harms individuals, which means he's concurring with us in today's debate. With this, you are welcome to our team. Now the House, the summary of all the arguments of proposition in today's debate is that freedom of speech should be made absolute. My panel, one key rebuttal to this. What happens when people are given absolute freedom of speech? They tend to abuse it. Panel, therefore, if we give people absolute freedom of speech, it obviously means that they're going to let hell loose on earth, which is what we, the Team Opposition, is trying to avoid in today's debate. With this, their case falls in today's argument. Over to my first argument on how freedom of speech helps in preventing radicalization and violence. Panel. Radicalization is the process of holding extremist ideologies about certain groups of individuals, which goes with thoughts of violence, thoughts of discrimination, and thoughts of hatred. Panel. One big flaw about hate speech is that it actually labels a whole group of individuals, thus increasing radicalization, violence, and discrimination. Panel. What hate speech does is that it actually pushes the voice of these individuals more, so it makes them more radical against this labeled group of individuals, thus making these individuals more vulnerable. The House.
Point of information,
what
Speaker.
actually do in this case is to lead this hate speech through social media platforms, thus increasing radicalization and real-world violence. The House.
Point
The 20
of
team opposition will actually take this hate speech down in order to save the most lives, because it infringes on individual, because it actually constitutes infringement on other rights of other people. Panel, for example, in 2019, the Christchurch mosque shootings that took place in New Zealand was actually linked to a hate speech that led to the radicalization of the perpetrator on far-right communities. Panel, this is a practical example of how hate speech causes
Point
violence.
of information.
May I have it?
How will censorship address the root causes of harmful content rather than just symptomize?
May I have it? Come again, please.
How will censorship address the root causes of harmful content rather than just symptomize it?
The House. How can team proposition come up to tell us, to ask us how hateful content can actually reprimand what they said? Panel, my second sponsor speaker will address this in his course of argument. But my second argument on how social media as private entities exist. The House. Social media platforms are owned by private individuals and not the government. Panel, what this means is that individuals can stipulate the guidelines that guide the use of the social media platforms, which means if they limit speech on social media platforms, it doesn't mean that they're limiting individuals' freedom of speech, but actually they're trying to protect the community guidelines that protects their platforms. In conclusion, the House, we brought you a world where we can reduce radicalization and violence through limiting hate speech on social media platforms by censorship. We also brought you a world where we can actually ensure that people do not step on other people's boundary by censoring hate speech on social media platforms, which are owned by private individuals, and that the people that gets to enforce and establish their own guidelines. At this juncture, team opposition says, let the motion fall. Thank you.
Kudos to you. Now, I invite the second supporting speaker from the side proposition to close their case.
From the opposition side, I noticed that the first speaker and the first supporting speaker was reading almost we're reading almost their points from the paper they hold, which shows that they are not prepared for this competition. Please, judges, help me know that. If censorship is really meant to protect us, then why do powerful people with money and influence really consult regular people? It's a question we must answer. And these are the evidence to prove and to justify to you that censorship of hate speech on social media platform is an infringement on freedom of speech. To start with, the Cybercrime Prevention Prevented to Act was created to stop harm, not to block opinion. Using this law to censor speech could mean enabling the people's idea as hate speech just to silence them. This can make the people afraid to share their opinion, which leads to more limits to our freedom. In Nigeria, many people were criticizing the government online, which is not right. Using this law to silence criticism can stop important idea about democracy and right. Can we protect freedom of speech if it leads to violence and harm? Of course, we can protect the freedom of speech by promoting responsible discussion while addressing harmful action and not silencing opinion. To prove further, when we censor hate speech, it will be difficult for the people to tell what is harmful and what is just an unpopular opinion. For instance, in China, many activists were silenced for speaking out against the government. But if we limit opinion, are we stopping hate speech or just controlling conversation? Believe me, we are controlling conversation and may miss out an important idea that could lead to positive change. In conclusion, censorship of hate speech on social media platform is essential for protecting people and promoting respectful dialogue. It prevents harm and Hope social media is a safer space for everyone to express themselves. And I believe with these highly convincing and justifiable points of our team, we have succeeded in brain feeding you without any iota of doubt in order to agree with us that really and truly censorship of hate speech on social media platform is an infringement on freedom of speech. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I invite the second supporting speaker from the side opposition to close their case.
Does hate speech on social media platforms jeopardize other fundamental rights of minority individuals? Yes. So what becomes the quick solution to this, Mr. Chair? Censorship. Good evening, everyone. As a support here from side opposition. Two points of contention in deciding this argument should be: one, which of these arguments smartly protect all the fundamental rights of minority individuals who are the receiving point of hate speech, and two, which of these arguments smartly encourages democracy and democratic values. Mr. Chair, already in the status quo, a lot of individuals has lost their lives as a result of hate speech. Talk about Anambra 3rd of 2012, whose cyberbullying and hate speech on social media led to her suicide. Now, what becomes the solution to this episode of inhumanity? Censorship. Therefore, the restriction of hate speech on social media platforms remains essential in protecting the lives of the minorities. Then again, General House, throughout side opposition's arguments, we are able to get something quite clear in this debate. They told us how censoring hate speech undermines freedom of speech, which clashes democracy. But General House, we showed you through our list speaker how our argument smartly encourages democracy. By censoring hate speech, Mr. Chair, we protect other fundamental human rights, which in turn protects democracy, because these fundamental human rights pillars democracy. Then again, General House, on a more laughable note, they came up with the argument that freedom of speech is a fundamental human right. But Mr. Chair, our argument that freedom of speech is not absolute directly clashes that argument. In a sense, Mr. Chair, through our speaker, I'll make reference to our speaker, where she already told you that you are given the right to freedom of movement doesn't mean you have the right to come into my house anytime, any day without permission. And that you're given the freedom of association doesn't mean you should associate with terrorist group. Hence, limitation on rights is very essential to protect the life of the minorities and also to protect the lives of the majorities. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, every right is equal and so to be treated as such. Hence, any right that jeopardizes all fundamental rights should be censored. And then, we asked side opposition a POI, but Mr. Chair, they never gave us any credible answer. Hence, concording or conceding with we, the team opposition, that censorship is not an infringement in the freedom of speech. Thank you.
Wow, that was a heated argument. Now, I will hand it over to the judges. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can see that this is a very keenly the competition was keenly contested, and at the same time, a winner must emerge. And in our decisions, it was unanimously, though working independently, given to Team Ogun. On the ground that the team was more composed, eloquent, and fluent. The team, which other team? Team Anambra 2 did their best, but there was over-reliance on what is called the team, yes, over-reliance on the palm cards, as can be seen, and the third speaker was good. But as we have said, a team must merge a winner, and for this reason, the three judges now, in their independent working, gave the winning to Team Ogun.